We all know someone who has chosen not to be involved in their kids' lives. Yet they get to be comfortable. They get to come to all the social outings, they come to the cookout. Like, they live their life 100% comfortable. Their family knows, grandma knows, everyone knows. No one ever calls them out. No one ever says, hey, put that fork down and call your damn kids.
Welcome to Off Code, the show where we ignore the cultural codes and have real and intriguing conversations regarding the Black community and ways we can move forward to human flourishing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Off Code. I am Monique
And I am Kevin Briggins, and we are glad that you all are back with us again this week. How you been, Mo?
I've been okay. You know, it's going. We had a good 4th celebrating the founding of our nation.
Mm-hmm. I can't believe it. So what'd you do for Juneteenth? Why are you talking about the 4th?
I took a nap.
Oh man, we're gonna get in trouble. We are going to get in trouble. Well, I'm excited for this episode because we have a special guest today, and it's someone I followed for a long time on X, and I think that our audience is really going to enjoy this conversation.
I think so too. Today we are talking about Black fatherlessness, and our guest is Adam B. Coleman. He is the author of 2 books, and I suggest both of them to you. The first one is Black Victim to Black Victor, and the other one is called The Children We Left Behind. And The Children We Left Behind is the book that we're going to focus our discussion on today, looking at what happens to the children of fatherless homes. It's a bit of Adam's story in it and thread throughout, but it also, talks about the pain, the trauma, depression, what happens to women who are left by men. Why aren't we talking about Black fatherlessness more? I'm looking forward to it. You ready?
I think it's going to be an episode a lot of people can relate to. So
yeah. I mean, and fatherlessness happens in all cultures and communities, but I do think because it's off code and we are talking about issues in the Black community, we're going to talk about this today.
For real. So yeah. All right. So without further ado, let's bring Adam on.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate that.
No problem. I have to deal with Mo all the time, man. I'm used to it. You good?
All right.
It's so sad. I do have my own level of foolishness. Well, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. Like, who are you and what made you want to write? Now, I really want to know Black Victim to Black Victor, but that's not the book we are focused on today. What made you decide to talk so deeply about the children we left behind? Like, where did that come from for you?
Yeah, so a little bit about me, and actually I can sort of talk about Black Victim and Black Victor because it's kind of like the origin how I even got into all this. I'm an IT guy by trade. I was the IT manager back in 2020, and obviously COVID and all these other things started happening. So I decided that I wanted to figure out, am I losing my mind? Because it seemed like overnight everyone was saying things that no one was saying before. And I found out that I'm not crazy. Everyone else is starting to lose their mind. So I wanted a way to express myself. Also wanted a way to leave something for my son as a legacy. And I figured a book was a good idea. It was something that I had in mind for about a year. And then George Floyd happens and all these discussions about race. And so I wanted to write my thoughts about race, but actually to sneak in that the biggest issue facing Black Americans is family separation. So I just started writing the book from my office and took me about 8 to 9 months and put it out there and wanted to see if anybody cared to think about or cared to read about what I wrote. And that was back in 2021 when I published it. I had no platform. I wasn't really on social media at all. And today I'm obviously an author of 2 books, I write for the New York Post semi-regularly now, for the past, I would say, about 3 years now, almost 3 years. Write for multiple publications, Newsweek, Daily Mail, list goes on. And done TV internationally, public speaking, you name it. I feel like I have 8 jobs, running around the world, filming stuff now. So it's been an amazing transition in my life, to be an advocate for things that are common sense but are necessary to talk about. But to answer your real question about The Children Left Behind, I felt like The Children Left Behind was the most obvious book for me to write, and it took me 4 years to write it because I was like trying to figure out, oh, what should I write about, and finally it was just like, well, yeah, duh, this is the most obvious thing for me to write about because it was a topic that I kept writing about in my different articles. And so I figured, let me tell some stories and let me highlight something that I think is not talked about in this particular way, especially the angle of parental selfishness.
Yeah. And I'm gonna be honest, man, that is really the heart of the topic that I want to go down because, this is called off code, and we typically talk about things that other people aren't willing to talk about. And I think that is what makes your book so unique because there's plenty of books that talks about fatherlessness. It talks about the statistics and you're more likely to do this, but you just really jumped into the heart of it and called it parental selfishness. So for our audience, can you kind of just flush that out? What do you mean when you say parental selfishness? What is that?
I would define parental selfishness as the constant rationalization to do the thing that you want to do, regardless if it benefits your children or if it does not benefit your children. But usually if you're rationalizing something, it's because it's something that you're not supposed to do, but it's the thing that you want to do. I use the example, if you've been on a diet and you say, I should have some ice cream, you'll rationalize having the ice cream by saying, I've been good for the past 3 weeks. It's just one time, right? You're doing that because you're not supposed to have ice cream. You're following a regimen. So anytime you rationalize your bad behavior, deep down, that your behavior is bad. And so when you say, well, you know what, as long as I'm happy, my children will be happy, you're rationalizing your choice. And anything that is of truth, anything that is beneficial, you don't rationalize. No one rationalizes having a salad. Like you just do it. Everyone knows that intrinsically it is a good thing. So what I keep seeing over and over are adults choosing themselves over their kids, acting foolish, despite how their children might see them, engaging in reckless relationships, dragging their kids along. They're thinking about themselves and how they feel and what they're going through. And some of it, if I'm to be somewhat empathetic, it stems from when they were kids and the patterns that they saw. And now the cycle continues over and over and over.
It's so insightful. I've never, heard it defined that way, but it's so true. I'm going to go here. I'll speak from my own experience. And y'all probably had this too. But if your mama going to a party and she ain't got nobody to watch you, she going to bring you to that party and you going to sit in that little side room. And who knows what manner of foolishness and debauchery is happening in the rest of that apartment or house. But you had to go where your parents went and you were exposed to all kinds. In my experience, you were exposed to all kind of things because that is what your mom wanted to do. So they were smoking weed, if they was drinking, if people was drunk and walking around stumbling and, all of that. That's just, that to me it's a example of what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. And some of it, you can say it's selfishness. Some of it is narcissism. And in many cases, you can say it could be seen as clinical, if it's constant repeat behavior, manipulating the people around them or manipulating the children to get the outcome that they want. These are very common things that you see. And narcissism, because often we just throw out the word narcissism, but it stems from something, and it stems from a childhood where they feel that they were not advocated for. And so their viewpoint on the world is that they are the only ones who care about their circumstance. And so they're going to do everything possible to get an advantage, to benefit themselves, because no one, and they don't believe that anyone actually cares about them. And so that's why they don't care about anybody else. They have to get theirs. Otherwise, they'll never get any sort of benefit. And a lot of that stems from they grew up in a home where the parents thought about themselves, thought about other things, maybe thought about drugs, drinking. They thought about all these other things and did not advocate for their children, did not give their children what they needed, and always felt that the only way that they got something was if they got it themselves. So it just takes that feeling to an extreme level. So they end up growing up to be adults who treat people as if they're optional, as if they're expendable, which is why narcissists only think about themselves. Getting into a relationship with a narcissist is horrible, because in a relationship, you have to sacrifice. Well, narcissists are not willing to sacrifice, right? You're expendable to a narcissist, right? But this person didn't just exist one day, when they were 20. This is someone who was groomed throughout their childhood to ultimately become this particular person. So obviously, it's not every single circumstance where a child grows up like that. Some of them don't. But that's the root of it. When you do see that particular person, that is where it starts from.
Yeah. It's so for the audience to kind of understand, all three of us grew up in single parent homes, single mother homes. My wife, the same. But what you just described was, I would say that was my father. I love my father. I didn't meet my dad until I was 16.
Wow.
But what you just described was his relationship with his dad. And it's very similar to your story, Adam. And I don't know if you're going to get into it, but my father's dad, so my grandfather, basically wasn't married to his mom, but had another family. And my dad felt like he was the other kid, but eventually he was kind of discarded, not brought around anymore, and he grew up with a lot of resentment, and he grew up with a lot of, I got to look out for me because no one else will. And he's 70 something years old, and he still has that mentality of, I've got to look out for me, and I don't even think he knows that's what he's doing, but that is absolutely the mindset in which he operates from. And it stems from fatherlessness. It stems from being abandoned, not feeling like not wanted, and all of these types of things. And so when you talk about the children we left behind, kind of talk about what are some of the effects of that? What are some of the traumas and things that, like, we could say kids, but we're adults now. So even us as adults, what are some things that we deal with today, or some kids still deal with today?
Well, there's a wide range of things, and I see it all over the place. So let's start with the extreme end. On the extreme end are the obvious things that we complain about. Drug addiction, homelessness, and a lot of times the homelessness is linked to drug addiction or some sort of substance abuse. Violent conduct, in general, criminal conduct. And there's different reasons as to why someone would do all these things. And some of the criminal conduct links to drug addiction. And I think drug addiction is actually like a really, really big problem. We don't call it drug addiction. Sometimes we try to minimize it. Oh, they just smoke weed. It's not a big deal. But what I will say is, when you talk to people and you drill into their lives, you find out that people who are frequent drug users have been using drugs since their early teens, sometimes preteens. And so you have to ask yourself two questions. One, how does a preteen get drugs? Right? That is a child who's not being protected whatsoever. So that's one. And two, why would a teenager or preteen need to constantly consume drugs? And it's because they're coping with something, right? And often it's something that is traumatic that's happened to them. I had a conversation with an NYPD detective for dinner, and he was talking about, you arrest a perp, and sometimes they got to go to the hospital, or sometimes you're doing paperwork, you're just sitting. There's a lot of like downtime, but you're like sitting one-on-one with this guy you just arrested, and they just talk to you. And he told me, you would not believe how many young Black men have been molested when they were children.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just a constant theme that he heard. And it makes you also think, why would they tell this NYPD detective about them being molested? And it's probably because no one else listened. I mean, that's the most obvious. Why would you tell a stranger something so deep and personal? It's because, well, no one else seems to care. And here is the stranger actually seems like he cares, even though he's arresting you.
Yeah.
Right. So that's on the extreme end, where the very traumatic childhood situation leads into very traumatic outcomes when they're adults. And also yeah.
I'll say dive into that a little bit, because you talk about that a little bit in terms of how does the brokenness of the fallenness, what situations happen to where these young boys end up in that situation where they get molested. So what does that look like? What behaviors of the adults lead to that?
So some of it is just being unaware, and some of it is just carelessness. Statistically speaking, the most dangerous situation for a child is when they are living in a home with a non-biological adult. So in a very simple circumstance, if we're talking about a community of people who are growing up in single mother homes, it looks like mom's boyfriend or your stepdad. That person is statistically more likely to harm you, whether it be physically or sexually or both. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But that is likely to be the perpetrator. And so that's why in the book, I have an entire chapter dedicated to it, talking about the monsters we let inside our home, because we'll just use the most well-intentioned single mother that's out there. At some point, she wants a relationship, right? And she thinks, I wait 3 months, I'm dating this guy, maybe 6 months before I let him meet my child. She's doing all the right things. And what she doesn't realize is that that's fine for someone who is not a predator, but a predator will wait, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see hunters who hunt deer and all different types of animals. They sit there in the grass and wait hour after hour after hour until that moment. And so for predators, it is never about the woman. It is always about getting access to the child. And in a situation where a single mother, which I think in many ways is a failing position, right? Not because the mother's bad. It's just an incredibly difficult position to be in, to be the only person who earns the money, the only person who's supposed to caretake for children. You can only be in one place at one time. Some man shows up and says, girl, I got you. I'll help you. Don't worry about that. I love your kids. Your kids are great. I'm gonna buy them some McDonald's. I'm going to take them. I'm going to treat your kids just like they were my kids. That sounds like the most amazing scenario for any woman to hear who's in that circumstance. But that is the trap. For these predators, that's the bait. Like they're throwing that out there. You took the bait, and all they have to do is wait, and you get your emotions attached. And so your emotions are attached. You don't see the signs. That thing that's kind of weird that he just did, or why did he come out of the room? Like, I woke up in the middle of the night and he wasn't in the bed. Like, you, in a normal circumstance, you'd probably ask some questions, but you want to believe that there's no way that you are sleeping with a pedophile. Absolutely. No, that can't be true. And you will deny and deny. And in many cases, they're hoping that their child will say something, which children are very complicated when it comes to understanding their emotions. Is this good? Is it bad? Because it feels good, but it doesn't feel right at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe the guy's threatening. If you say something, I will kill you. I'll kill your mother. Like, what do you expect a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old to say to something like that? Like, so these are predators. They hunt single mothers. And I
Yeah.
don't think we ever say it that particular way. We just like to think, oh, this single mother just happened to be sleeping with a pedophile. No, he purposely wanted to be in that circumstance. He found you. You didn't find him. Like, if it wasn't going to be you, it was going to be another single mother. He wants access to the kids. The kids were always the objective.
Yeah. So that's the extreme. What is the less extreme issues in terms of what kids deal with?
So the less extreme is where I say I would fall into. There is something about, because we're more often talking about fathers who have less access to the kids. They're in the single parent home. What the children experience is they have two people that created them, and only one of them cares. And that is something that is hard to grasp for a child. And so children often say, is it my fault? We hear kind of like the trope, two parents divorce, the child blames himself for the divorce, right? Because they don't know, they don't understand adult relationships, right? Adults barely understand adult relationships. And so they can't comprehend what is going on. So imagine growing up in a single parent home, and the person who helped to create you shows no interest in you, doesn't try, doesn't come around, doesn't pretend. You don't hear from them. And then you look around you and it seems like everyone else has their dad. And so as a kid, you're like, maybe it's because there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm not worth it. And the big thing that I learned as a father when it came to my son was that I'm incredibly important with building up my son's self-esteem. Because in life, shit gets hard real fast, and even for kids. And they're doing things that they've never done before, and they're going to mess up. They need to know that messing up is part of life and it's okay, rather than it is an example of their flaw, that there is something wrong with them. And that was where I fell into, where I felt like when I messed up, something was wrong with me. If I didn't get that girl, it's because something was wrong with me, rather than I'm just not her type. Or maybe I'm doing something that's given the wrong impression, right? But especially for me, there was a desperation of love. And what I often find is, for these, especially, actually, I would say both sexes, there is a desperation to want to fill that void of love. And in many cases, they accept anything that comes their way, and they don't know if this is this good or bad. They're just like, someone fill that void for me, because my father didn't do that. So I think that was a lot for me when I was younger, constantly looking for external validation. If a girl liked me, I was all in, right? There was no discernment, and then of course she would break up with me because I'm probably doing stuff. I'm probably acting desperate. I don't have that high of self-esteem, or she just lost interest for whatever reason. And then my entire value that I placed on myself was built upon her, and now she's gone and my value dips once again. So much of my teenage years and young adult years revolved around looking for external validation, because I didn't know how to build myself up. I didn't have anyone to show me how to do that. And this constant roller coaster of value, of low self-worth, constantly questioning myself. And this is decades before I was able to change my life and really understand what I'm doing. And a lot of that has to do with my son, and realizing where he is and what he needs from me. And also understanding, like, I need to build myself up as an example for my son, so he doesn't follow in the same footsteps as myself.
I love the way that you frame that, like this kind of like this rebound effect. Well, studies have been done that talk about how men, and it's not called the rebound effect, it's just kind of the words I'm putting on it, but studies have been done about how fathers actually help children in this kind of like emotional rebound. So for example, I was watching my neighbors the other day, and they have a 2-year-old son. Son fell down. Mom immediately wanted to run over and be like, oh my gosh, like, let me dust you off. Are you okay? Husband stopped her and was like, you're fine. Like, get up. Like, and it's not out of this idea of like, let me not coddle you, let me not be sensitive, but just this, how do you deal with the hard things that come in life? How do we, not coddle you so much that you can't deal when hard things happen? But what I really wanted to highlight was this idea of what almost sounds like rationalizing and a non-custodial or a non-biological parent in the home. And so when we have single moms, we have this idea, well, she also needs love, or she has needs, or, she doesn't want to be lonely and things like that. But then that puts this other weight and burden on our kids. And it almost sounds like a betrayal of the kids that we bear, like that we birth into the earth. It's like, well, how do we talk about the reality that, yes, I understand, as a woman, you might, need companionship and all of these things, but we can't do that to the betrayal of our kids. I don't know if you see it as betrayal, but that's kind of just what came from me as I'm listening to you speak. Like it almost sounds like this is a risk I'm willing to put my kid in.
Mhm.
I mean, in life, there are always risks, and I'm not even saying, well, I guess that's it. Don't have a relationship till the kids are 18. But what I'm saying is, everyone should be well aware of the environment they're entering. If I go on a safari, I need for them to tell me there's a risk that you might get jumped by some zebras. Like I need to know the risk of what I'm about to enter into, rather than saying everything will be fine, nothing bad could possibly happen. I need to understand these risks. And so I think it's important for us to let people know that there are predators out there, that there are predators who look for the scenario that you're in. And so you need to be very, very attuned to the signs. For example, do you guys ever watch Steve Wilkos, the talk show?
Yeah.
Okay. A pretty common theme that happens is love bombing. And so for someone who is in desperation, or kind of down bad, like you'll hear stories of these women who are on the brink of homelessness and all different types of terrible situations that they're in, and they're trying to do the best that they can. And here comes a knight in shining armor who says, I don't care about any of that stuff. I got you, girl. And they love bomb them to death. And that is like a telltale sign that something is wrong here. Any man who constantly gives you unearned praise, he just met you and he says after a few days that he's in love with you, like this man is doing this for a particular reason. And you need to be very attuned to that this is a strategy for this type of person. And I think when we're at our weakest moments, that's the vulnerability. And so some woman who is in that weak moment, who, maybe she grew up in a scenario where she didn't feel that type of love. And here comes someone who's just showering her with what it seems like love. Like that is something that's intoxicating. And that's how they get you. That's the bait. So like you understanding what you're getting into, the danger that it represents. Yeah, absolutely. Go and date. But do it wisely, like do it very smartly. It's not just, oh, well, it's been 2 months, I guess I'll introduce my kids to them. The other part, let's say we'll remove the sexual predator angle. I see too often where they're forcing the kids to like this new man. That to me is a problem. Like your kids are like, I don't like him. And you're like, you better like, no, maybe your kids don't like him for a reason. Like this guy gives them, there's something instinctual. Kids are pretty honest and they're like, something about this guy I don't really like. Or maybe the guy's not necessarily doing anything wrong, but maybe they're not over that their dad's no longer in the home. Like maybe you should work on your kids. Maybe you see what's going on with your children. Why don't you like this guy? Be willing to say, you know what, I'm sorry, I can't move forward. But it's the ones where they're forcing the kids and then choosing the man over the kids. And there's way too many scenarios where because they get wrapped up in this man who constantly showers them with love, they know that that man is doing something to their kids, and they say nothing. They act like they didn't see it.
Yeah.
They know something's going on. Like there's an uncomfortable amount of mothers who have done this. And Steve Wilkos is a great example where as adults, they're crying in front of their parents, taking a lie detector test, proving that they've been telling the truth the entire time. And then the first response from their mother is, well, why didn't you tell me then?
Yeah.
You know, it's that type of like complete disconnect from being accountable for their part and what happened to their children.
Yeah. I want to balance out the parental selfishness for a minute because I don't want anybody to think we're bashing on single moms or anything like that. And I just go to your own story, and as a way in which men and fathers show this type of parental selfishness, right? Bring kids into the world that they don't want to be a part of their life, you know? They don't want to take the time to actually be fathers. And they become absent and they don't realize the damage that they're doing to their own kid just from the, I guess the idea of being distant and distance, not even just in space or distance, but like emotionally distant. Because even in your own story, I was listening to it and it sounds like your dad was afraid to have a relationship with you because sometimes they feel guilty and sometimes they're just selfish. But I think in some cases, and I think this might have been the case in your father's case, they're not allowed or they can't have a relationship with you because they're selfishly holding on to some other relationship with a significant other that they don't want to mess up. Right. Yeah. So I guess talk about from the male perspective, how ways in which we're parentally selfish and not thinking about the consequences of our actions when we, do this type of stuff.
So to highlight my father, it's difficult psychoanalyzing my father because I know very little about him.
Mm.
For years, I thought his first name was something else. Like that's how little I knew about my father. So when it comes to him, he was married. He was always married. He was married to somebody else, including when we were conceived. So he was always married to somebody else. What I didn't find out until I wrote this book, having conversations with my mom, I didn't know he didn't have children with his wife. And I found out that I have a sister somewhere else with some other woman that he had a relationship with, and he has zero relationship with that child. I'm 40. I just found this out. Like there's so little, so little I know about this man's life.
Yeah.
My father was an immigrant to this country. He came from Trinidad. Came, I believe, when he was 30. Every other person I know, child of immigrant, they at least know like the backstory. Like what's their immigration story? I don't know anything about my father's immigration story. I don't know why he came to the States. I don't know what led up to it. What it was like for him when he first got here. I don't know anything like that. So that's why I say like, I have the chapter saying our biological strangers. Like so many young men, especially, but so many kids don't know their fathers. Like they've just been cut off access to their fathers to understand them as men. Some of it is because of the other, the mothers, that is a thing that does happen. But in many cases, it's just that the fathers are so withdrawn for years and they just never expose themselves. They never open up. They don't get involved. They make excuses as to why they shouldn't be involved.
They rationalize. They rationalize their actions. Yeah.
And actually, I'm going to combine because you asked, like, how are the men able to do these things? But I think there's a social element too, because we all know that there's a guy that's out there, whether it's our own parents or whether it's extended family. We all know someone who has chosen not to be involved in their kids' lives. Yet they get to be comfortable They get to come to all the social outings. They come to the cookout. Like they live their life 100% comfortable. Their family knows, grandma knows, everyone knows. No one ever calls them out. No one ever says, hey, put that fork down and call your damn kids. No one does that. And that is the social anger. There's no shame when it comes to it.
Yeah.
You know, and there should be some shame. There should be some shame when it comes to, hey, you want to be man enough to lay down with some woman and create a child. We need to be man enough to take care of that child. Right. And if you choose not to do that, then we choose not to be involved in your life. Like that is a conscious choice. I am not allowing you to sit around me for you to feel comfortable and I say nothing to you and I claim to love you. Well, who's advocating for that child? Because it sounds like I just want to uphold our relationship. I don't want to call him out. I don't want to mention it. It's a tough subject. You know, then it's about what you want as the person who knows that there's a child who's being abandoned. So there's a lot of that. And I'm not saying it's easy because it's not, but I know I have people in my head right now that I can think of where they consciously know, the entire family knows what's going on. No one says anything. They see each other all the time. They talk all the time. The grandmother knows what's going on. And no one ever brings up this child. Like, and it's been decades. And this child is now an adult and no one brings him up. And it's just secret after secret after secret where they don't tell anybody. And then they go out and make new kids and they're taking care of that kid, but that kid doesn't know that they have a sister or a brother. Like everyone is walking around with these social secrets. Like, and it's so strange to me. And it's so unfortunate that, we're Christians. We're all Christians, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. The element of avoiding truth, that truth is just so uncomfortable that you just avoid it, just living in deception. And that to me bothers me. That's what if someone tells me the truth, I do not care how uncomfortable it is. I need to know this. I have a relationship with my wife. Don't lie to me. Don't blow my head up, make me think. If I got something on my face, tell me I got something on my face. If my outfit looks terrible, be honest with me because I'm going to be honest with you. Why? Because I love you. And there's an element of, well, I love them, but this is touchy and I'm just going to deceive them because at least I can guarantee that nothing will rock. And it's like, well, then you don't love that person. Like you don't truly love that person. My son can come to me at any time and ask me a question. I'm going to give him an honest answer. And sometimes it's the thing that he wants to hear and sometimes it's not. But he knows that he can come to his father and get an honest answer 24 hours a day. And the same with my wife. I do not lie to you because I love you. I genuinely love you. And I see so many people living in deception, right? Not living godly. And I have a genuine problem with that.
Yeah. We become complicit and hypocritical. It's something we would call a cordial hypocrisy, where now I'm, kind in my hypocrisy, but it's still like this cordial little hypocritical, thing that I'm participating in. Unless things get a little spicy at the barbecue and then somebody says something about you over the Kool-Aid pitcher.
Right.
Old Marquise got that baby on the side they don't talk to. You know that one with the light skin and the good hair? But that's how it come out, know, and then it becomes a big kerfuffle and to do, but we will be good for some shady, underhanded, acknowledgments of your child that you don't talk to. But otherwise, we just keep it going just to keep it going, not to rock the boat, not to, get things started and things like that. But I agree. There's no calling to truth there, and that's not love.
Right. And even in that example that you gave, that child is a weapon. That's not love.
Yeah.
Right. That's the only reason you brought it up. You don't actually care about that kid. You care about hurting that person with the name of that child.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, because you're saying so much and it's hitting home, and I'm just thinking about the culture we grew up in. We all know the statistics of the Black community. only 1 in 4 Black women in their lifetime will be married. Only 30% of the community is married today. And 70 to 75% of children are born outside of wedlock, right?
Yeah.
We have normalized this brokenness of the nuclear family. I'm interested in your opinion or your thoughts of, man, how do we get here? Because you talked about this social element, and it's so ingrained in us. There is no level of shame. No one calls it out. Nobody holds anyone responsible. It's just normalized, you know? I don't know. I'm just interested in your thoughts of, man, how do we get here as a culture?
I'm sure you guys have heard people say that Black people are the canaries in the coal mine.
Yeah.
Good.
And sometimes I'm like, no, I don't think so. But sometimes I'm like, yeah. In this case, I say yes. When it comes to feminism, we don't like to call it that, but what we're seeing is Black feminism. We think of feminism as some white girl with pink hair screaming in a college campus, but I'm watching the same behavior. I'm watching the same rhetoric. I'm watching the same dismissiveness of men, animosity towards men. I don't know if you guys ever watch like online relationship content.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
Online relationship content is so aggressively negative between Black men and Black women. Like it is, if the guy does something slight, they're all bad. If the women do something slight, they're all bad, right? And everyone is living with this edge to them as far as being completely demoralized by the possibility of having a relatively healthy relationship with the opposite sex, while at the same time, obviously being attracted to the opposite sex, right? Imagine having to have sex with someone that you don't like. Like, it's a weird scenario that we're in, but that's the culture that we're dealing with. We're dealing with a culture of Black men and Black women who don't like each other, right? They might say they love each other, right? And that's questionable at times, but they don't like each other. My wife tells me all the time, she's like, I like you. That's something completely different. You can love your uncle who's a bit of a jerk, right? But you don't hang out with him. You don't really like being around him, but you still have some love for him. But you want to like that person. And what I'm seeing is an element of disdain between the sexes. But I think it's even stronger coming from women, from Black women towards Black men. It's a weird situation, and that's why I kind of talk about it within the book. That not necessarily making it racial within the book, but the behavior is consistent. This type of animosity towards men, the way I see it is, the most important sex to a child is the same sex. So for girls, it's the mom, boys, it's the father. But the opposite sex teaches us about relationship dynamics between the sexes. So if you're a girl who has her father in the home, you learn what it's like to see male authority. You learn to see that your father treats your mother in a particular way that is pleasant. So then when you grow up and you start dating, if you meet a guy who is rude, you know, my dad wasn't like that with my mom. I know what a real man looks like.
Yeah.
Now that your father's a prototype for your future relationships, essentially. Now, what if he is gone and you don't know what you're picking? And so then you pick a guy who's just shiny, right? He's the pretty boy, right? The worst guy that you can get with if you're looking for something long term. And for similar reasons, but that's a whole other thing. But the worst guy you can get with, you know, as a guy, we can look and be like, oh, this guy's trash. Like, why would he? But then the girls who have no blueprint, they have no prototype, choose this guy. And then their life gets messed up and choose the next guy who's just like him. They have no blueprint as far as how to seek a man. And so they built this resentment about every man is trash. No, you just have no picker. And a lot of that stems from your father. So there's that part. And then the other part is they hold a deep resentment because their father was not there for them. And if their father, the most important man in their life, chose not to be around them, chose to do other things besides being involved in their life, then how is this man going to do any better than him? And so to bring it back to feminism, what feminism does, and just like all bad ideologies, it exploits people's issues. It exploits people's deep down emotional state. So feminism says it's not just your dad, it's all men. That's where feminism comes into play. So when I look, historically speaking, if you want to see where the bend goes, it is by saying that man that let you down, that's all men. And if you want to get ahead, you got to say, F men, I'm going to do what I want. And you got to be a boss. Why do you have to be a boss? Because you can't depend on men. Look what your daddy did. He wasn't dependable, right? It always points back to that flaw. And so then people repeat that behavior and they create the circumstance that they don't like in the first place. So as much as that woman doesn't like the circumstances she grew up in a single parent home, by her not healing, she ultimately will likely create the very circumstance that she doesn't like.
I would say, well, first of all, I'm gonna say to all the Black girls watching who didn't grow up with their daddy, you either need to go get your tissue box or like go punch the punching bag, do something, because I know you feeling it right now. But as a Black woman who grew up without her dad, and my story is very similar to yours in the immigration situation, because my dad immigrated over from Haiti. I have no idea of his immigration story. No idea at all. Don't know, what brought him here or, where in Haiti specifically he came from and things like that. But when you think about, Black women and not having a picker and all of that, I would say yes and amen to everything you said, but I would add on, or they will remain single intentionally and not date, not put themselves out there out of the fear of, getting into a situation with someone who might leave, someone who's like my dad. I don't know my dad, so I don't want to accidentally choose the person who could be like my dad. And so then they become extremely risk averse and they sit on the sideline. And so I would say that that's one of the two dynamics and why you see this huge dynamic of single motherhood is because we're not getting in a relationship. We have built in our mind, and I do agree that feminism played a part in this caricature of what a man is. And so now I'm continuously interacting with this caricature, this thought, this idea of what a man is. But we heard it in our music growing up. So I'm a little bit older than both of y'all, but not that much. I'm gonna put that out there. Not that much. But I always go back to our music because that's how we were discipled as kids. When you think about 90s hip hop, that was the music that raised us. And when you think about the 90s female groups that raised us all the way from Salt and Pepper to Queen Latifah to SWV and Escape and Karen White, like all these people who sang about or rapped about all of these things, a lot of it was just talking to this man. I think about Karen White, I'm not your superwoman. Well, what did that mean? I'm not the one to do all the things that you think I'm going to do. And, I'm not gonna, what did she say? Like, have your breakfast on the table and all of these things, because it was this idea of this is what a man is, but this is what it means to be a woman. This is what it means to be free. This is what it means to be a boss. I don't want no scrubs. Why don't I want a scrub? Because all men are scrubs. And so if I find someone who's not a scrub, I am finding like a needle in a haystack, or even yet, I'm finding somebody who's not Black. I'm finding somebody outside of my race. But we also see Black men building up this caricature of women, of Black women. And what did that lead them to? Outside of their race. And so now when you talk about like these love and relationship shows and things like that, and how Black men and women, they want to be in relationship, but they don't like each other. Well, they don't like the caricatures that have been built about one another. They want to get into relationship, but I don't want to get into relationship with this person. And this person represents all that I've been taught.
No, you're 1,000% right. There's a lot of competing narratives And that's where we're all being propagandized to some extent.
Yeah.
And I think that for a lot of Black Americans, whether it be through music, whether it be through movies, TV shows, or the godforsaken Tyler Perry movies, like
I was just about to say, if one of y'all could please get Tyler Perry, get him.
but Tyler Perry's shows and movies are all very similar to the effect that even if the archetype of that woman, I'm watching objectively, I'm like, she's not a likable person. But the man is always worse. Like there is always the guy that is worse. She like the big problem that you see with very feminist movies, and a lot of his movies feel very feministy to me, is that the woman has no arc. She has no story arc. She was born amazing. She never does anything wrong. She doesn't learn any particular lessons other than the only lesson she learns is that I'll never trust a man ever again. That's the only lesson she learns.
And to be true to herself. She had to find herself and be true
She
to
had to
herself.
find herself. And she's got her single girlfriend who will reinforce, don't trust these dudes. Like she'll get all of that, but she has no story arc, right? She's amazing. And it's always that type of scenario where it validates the broken woman story that you're broken, but guess what? The men are worse. And I think we are dealing with, in many ways, broken people. We have people who need to heal. And I say that humbly because in many ways I was broken for many years. And what people don't catch on, and this regardless of race, is that you get what you are. Right? If you're a broken person, that's the type of person not only that you attract, but that's the type of person you accept. And so, especially from the perspective of women, women are the ones who select, right? Guys come after women, all different types of guys, and you say, "I'll take that one." For guys, they shoot their shot wherever they can, and they just cross their fingers. Okay, this one we accept, and maybe things work out. And so, when I see a woman accepting this type of guy, I say, well, she believes she deserves that. That's the best that she thinks she deserves. That's what she wants. And so if I was just watching this talk show, she's like, yeah, from day one, he was cheating on me. And here she is with him years later. And I was like, well, that's because that's what she thinks she deserves. That's the best that she can get. From a position where you get to choose, you said, I'll take that one, the one who lies, the one who cheats, the one who treats me terribly. And we get into all these dramatic fights. That's what I deserve. That is the selection of a broken individual. And in the same, if a guy is picked by this woman and he says, yes, I like her, and he puts up with all of this nonsense, he's saying, you know what? That's what I deserve. So everyone is out here complaining about what they chose. That's the part.
You are so right. The manosphere guys, they get mad at me because they always tell women choose better. But then when they talk about women, they want to make it all about the woman. And I'm like, no, dude, choose better. And they hate it when the accountability is on them. You said something that was, I don't know, just made me really think about how the direction we're in. So we talk about women or the men not being in the home and how it affects the daughters, right? Well, the sons also don't get to see that example of how to be a man and what it looks like. And so you have a lot of single mothers raising sons to try to be men. And the women, it's crazy because it's like a cycle. The women are raising sons to be men that other women don't want. Right? And it's like, it's just this cycle. It's like, you would think that, man, you were raised by a woman, you're going to be the type of man that other women want. But it's not, because these women typically baby their sons to not be men. They allow them to just continue to be perpetual children. And then, women come by and be like, I'm not going to be your mom, because they're looking for a husband, looking for a provider, looking for a leader. And he has no idea how to be any of that because he's never been made to be, And so, it's just this cycle that just keeps going around and around.
Hey family, I wanted to take a minute and talk to you about Birmingham Theological Seminary. It's my seminary and it's a place that I extremely appreciate. They have small class sizes, very reasonable tuition, and professors who are committed to your education and to my education. If you are looking to extend your theological education and are considering seminary, I encourage you to check out Birmingham Theological Seminary. You can go to bts.education for more information. So I want to know your thoughts on the whole conversation about Black men really are not absent. They're there. They're just not in the home. Because that is the number one argument that is made from the other side about, Black fatherlessness. Black fatherlessness really isn't a thing. It is, just the talking point of the right. But Black fathers are there, they're invested in their kids' lives. They just don't live in the home. As if, I guess that's better at some level, maybe, but to me, that's not necessarily what the stats bear out and say, but I was just wondering your thoughts on that comment.
Yeah, some of that rhetoric stems from there was a narrative that they used to say where I used to hear people say Black men are more involved with their kids than any other demographic.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And which the first thing that when I heard that, I was like, that makes no sense whatsoever. Just to stick
complete lie.
Speaking. Right. So I wanted to where did this come from? And it came from I can't remember if it was the CDC or I can't remember which organization, but it was a survey that was done. And the survey was like a moderately higher percentage as far as being active in the child's life. But the part that they leave out is that this wasn't a study, it was a survey, it was voluntary. And so in my head, I think I am very active in my child's life. Right? It's very subjective. It's not an actual study. It's talking to people to see whether they think that they are based off of certain activities. Right? So this is not a scientific, it's not scientific whatsoever.
Exactly.
It's essentially an internet poll. Do you think you are attractive? Yes. Oh, see that? Most Black men are attractive, more attractive than white men. See, there you go.
That's
figured it all out. So, but on a serious note, what I would say is, and once again, I'm not speaking from I did everything right. I'm speaking from I've learned lessons from my childhood and in my young adult years. I had my son at the age of 21. In a situation where I did not marry his mother, right? We co-parented. And even with me being very well-intentioned, my son coming over every weekend, we co-parented well, we didn't fight, we have a good relationship. But the problem is I'm always behind, always. When he comes over Friday, I'm asking, how was the week? How was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? I am always behind functionally as a father. So when he has a problem on Tuesday, I'm not there to hear about his problem or to talk to him about it, right? And you know what? When he comes to see his father on Friday, he doesn't want to talk about that problem. Matter of fact, that problem seems to be over. He wants to spend time with his dad, right? And so I am functionally always behind when it comes to things. I have to wait for a phone call from his mother to tell me that something is going on because I don't live there, And so when people want to give this piss poor, low expectation of, well, they're just not in the same home, as if this is an address issue. It's not, right? This is an involvement. This is a day-to-day, because raising kids is a day-to-day function. And what they're essentially saying is everything is fine having part-time dads. And what I'm saying, and I'm putting myself in that position, I did not like being a part-time dad. I did not like being in that scenario. And even with me trying my best to be a good father to, I heard people say, well, you have your kid every weekend. That's great. And in my head, I'm like, it's not. It's not great. But this is the circumstance based off of my actions as a young man who was not raised to emphasize to get married, then have children, and how to select and all these other things. So I am left to deal with this circumstance the best way that I can. I would never tell someone go out, oh, you know what? You don't have to be in the house. Everything is cool. That would be an absolute lie. I am functionally always behind, even with me and having the best of intentions for my son. So when people say, oh, it's an address issue, but they're involved. Well, to what extent? To what extent? Because last I checked, you can't skip days with kids. Like, so someone's filling in that gap when that father is not there. And I struggle to believe that he just lives next door and he comes over every night. Like, no, that's not what's happening. He gets them every weekend or maybe every other weekend, and he is functionally involved and maybe he cares, but guess what? He is always functionally behind.
Wow.
The people who quote that, what bothers me about it is they know it's not true.
Yeah.
Right? Because all of us got the same story about our daddy. So like, you don't believe that black dads, like
exactly.
D-A-D-D-Y, you don't even know that guy, your daddy. Your daddy.
Your daddy.
We grew up with that. It was so normal. We had cheers about you don't know your daddy.
We so did. Yes.
And they want to talk about some black fathers are the most active and present. Like, man, you better go home somewhere with that. That ain't true.
That's so sad. In the book, you get real about mental health. And we've already touched on a little bit about mental health, but I'm hoping you can like talk a little bit more about the depression and anxiety that many kids experience. And then they take that into their adult years. But then we look on the other side too, and the single mothers are experiencing the same levels of depression and anxiety and fear. Because I mean, when you think about it, if you're a single mom, like you said earlier, now you're the sole provider. Don't let me lose my job. But you're also the sole protector. And this is something I saw with my mom. So my mom, at one point, she had my mom has had guns, but she had like a pistol. But then one day she came home with a sawed-off shotgun. And I said, Mama, what are we doing with that? But that's the role that you're in now as the person who has to protect my kids, because, I'll be damned if someone comes in my house to take my kids, to rob from us. And we had things going on in our house. So that shotgun was...
Monique, for context, where did you grow up?
I grew up in South Central Los Angeles.
Okay,
exactly. So yes, we had things popping off on our neighborhood all the time. But my mom, and she had to pull that gun out a few times. You know what I mean? So I can't imagine though the stress of having to do that as a woman. And because it's just like, I don't want to have to square up against a man. You know what I mean? Now, if we do, Father be with me, but what we say as kids, I'm gonna get my licks in. No. But no, like, the reality of that is sad and depressing, because if a guy wants to, like, one good hit and I'm going, and I'm a strong girl, but I'm also a big girl. Like, I'm not, like 5 feet tall. I'm 5'7", 5'8". And I'm sturdy. I'll just say that. But still, at the end of the day, that gun was needed because my mom understood the reality that I'm raising these kids. And if somebody comes across through a window or something pop off, I got to protect these kids, which to me just leads, back to that anxiety, that fear, that depression. And you could see that in her. So yeah, I'm just wondering if you can share with us a little bit about the mental health aspect.
Yeah. I try not to speak for my mom, but I can at least speak from what I saw of my mom. And I remember being a kid, and I think a lot of kids feel this way in some respects. They're like, oh, what's wrong with my mom? What's wrong with dad? Right. you just don't understand the pressure that they're under. And I think for a while, I used to look at my mom and like, geez, like chill out. Like she's wound up tight. Um, you know, ready to just like snap sometimes when I was younger. And now that she's older, she's in her 60s and she's a lot calmer. That's because, that pressure is different. It's less. But I can understand now as a 40-year-old who's looking at who's raised a child. Now my son's 19, and I get it. Like I understand why my mom was the way that she was. It's because she has all this pressure. Everything is on her back. She got 2 kids she has to take care of, and it's only her that's maintaining everything that is happening, and that's a lot. And when one thing doesn't go right, like you don't have the patience, you don't have the time. Um, like it's hard to keep all that stuff together, and I see that very often. And that's actually part of the trope of Black women, is that they're wound up tight, always they're
Mhm.
ready to fight, like all of this. And when I see that, I see someone who is deeply unhappy. I see someone who is not at peace whatsoever. They are someone who is on edge constantly, and that is a life of misery, and that person is miserable. And if I could say clinically miserable, they are clinically
Mhm.
miserable, if I could even say something like that. And that's how they carry themselves. And that is a lot for a human being to go through and to put up with. And so, yeah, when you see people act irrationally in certain circumstances, when you see them making bad choices, um, like sometimes it's because they got all this pressure. Everyone's looking at them, right? They're the captain of the ship, and they didn't necessarily sign up to be one. Like
Mhm.
everyone wants to know what choice they're about to make, and that is a lot of pressure to deal with. It's a lot easier if you have a partner where you can divide the responsibilities. Or you know what? If you lose your job, it's okay. You're not going to end up homeless because this other person has a
Mhm.
job. Like, um, you know, that type of scenario is so much more forgiving, right? And I also believe that allows for women to enter their true feminine selves and actually become nurturing, right? Your mom shouldn't have to be the hard-nosed protector grabbing the gun. She shouldn't have to be that. She should be able to be nurturing. She should be able to look out and ask you, how are you feeling today? It's okay, baby. I know you're worried about this. It's all right. She should be allowed to do that. And I find often is that the protection element comes first and the nurturing element takes a back seat more often than not in that single parent situation, because I can't nurture you to safety. Like
Mhm.
I don't have time to nurturing takes time, and it seems like a luxury when you got all the pressure on your back.
Mhm.
So I do think that that mental health element is definitely something we don't talk enough about. Instead, we memorialize this scenario for these women. And I
Ooh.
would never tell some woman to go through what my mom went through, to be evicted and watch everything put on the street and have to end up going to a homeless shelter.
Mhm.
Um, we were homeless twice when I was a kid, and to have to deal with that, to have to take at one point, the first time we were homeless, we stayed with a woman who offered a room in her trailer, right? All three of us staying in this one room. Like to have to go through all of that and try to build yourself back up to get into an apartment, have some independence. When we left the homeless shelter, we just took whatever we could find. We found this townhouse. It had roaches in the kitchen, but they came out at night, and it was much better than staying in a homeless shelter. Like
Mhm.
that's just what it was. But it was all on my mother's shoulders to do all that, to handle all that, to go to work and work long hours. Like that takes a toll on any person. Now, the mental health aspect for the children who are going through it is that the adult is worrying about adulting, and they have all of this responsibility, and it takes a lot of care and time and effort to look at the kids and see, like, are you being bruised by this entire endeavor?
Mhm.
um and so some kids just say nothing, and just mom's acting tough. I guess I got to act tough, and let me just suppress how I'm feeling. Or some kids like me, they just snap, and then you end up becoming another problem that your mother has to handle,
Mhm.
amongst other problems that she has to handle. And that's why for many years, and my mother got upset because in the first book, one of the questions was, why did I feel like a burden to my mother? Um, she said, you weren't a burden to me, but that's how I felt as a child.
Yeah.
Not because you did something, but because of what I was going through. And I'm watching you deal with all this, and I'm like, I'm another problem that my mom has to manage. And
Yeah.
no kid should have to feel like that. But
Yeah.
that's the reality. You're getting left behind because of the circumstance of what's going on. Even if your mother's in the best of intentions, she's a great person, all these other things, something takes a back seat. Something always takes a back seat, and sometimes it's the kids.
Yeah.
And that's the circumstance. And if you are barely making it, struggling, right? You got to work 60 hours a week to make ends meet. Well, all that time adds up as to when you're not around your kids. Someone else is raising your kid, right? Your
Yeah.
kids are somewhere else, or maybe they're being left alone at home, and they probably shouldn't be. Who knows? But like at the end of the day, they know that mom's not here, and when I'm going through something, I can't talk to her, and dad is nowhere to be found. And so
Yeah.
I am suffering in silence. Like no one hears me, no one hears what I'm going through, and I don't even feel comfortable saying anything to my mom because mom is coming home, eating dinner, and going to sleep,
Mhm.
and waking
Yeah.
up and repeating the same thing tomorrow.
That's the situation I was going to talk about a little bit or highlight is, what happens with the kids who are left behind. And yes, they're left behind, but in a sense, they're also propelled forward, especially that oldest sibling, because then they become
Mm.
parentified children because now they need to step in. There's no, spouse in the house. There's no father. And so how do we care for the younger siblings? How do we, make sure that dinner is made? How do we make sure that, groceries are picked up at the store? If like back in my day, I could walk to the store, on my own, and parents weren't like helicopter parents like they are today. So my mom would send me, a couple miles, go to the store and bring this back or whatever. And
Right.
so, yes, the idea of parentified children is something I don't think we talk about enough either. The fact that our children are not just able to live at an appropriate age and stage for their life when you do have, and I'm not saying this is, characteristic of every single mom, but many, their children are, they're parentified children.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being 100% honest, I think when I was younger, my sister resented me, not because of what I was doing, but because of the position she was placed in to caretake for me. And my sister's 4 years older. If I'm 8, she's 12. She wants to go and hang out with her friends. She doesn't want to sit at home and watch the child that she didn't create. Like, I shouldn't be her responsibility. I do think that there's an element of like looking out for your siblings. I think these are
Mhm.
generally good things. But when it's if they mess up, it's your fault. Like making them this like miniature adult, and they're a child, their brain's not fully developed. Like you're trying to hold them equally responsible. So I do think that that is a problem. But once again, this is a problem that gets exacerbated because of the circumstance of single parenthood. And
Yeah.
she's just looking for help from anyone, right, including this child. And also, if I could bring up another issue. So obviously, you have this archetype of a woman who has all this pressure on her, right? Well, just like any other human being, you want someone to talk to. And this is where it leads into the other part, where you get a lot of son husbands, right? You get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of children who are being exposed to adult things because of their adult mother, and talking to them about their relationships and a very adult things that they should not know anything about. Um, and that is equally a problem because now they're building a very inappropriate relationship but it gives them comfort because at least they can talk to someone, and they start looking at that child as a confidant rather than it's a child that they're supposed to care for. And so now that child cares more about their parents' emotions than their own emotions. So that's another thing. You're the man of the house now. Like that kind of stuff is like, no, this
You 10.
like it's not good.
But it goes back to that parental selfishness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they're not thinking about what is in the best interest of the child. It's all about trying to fulfill and take care of their needs. And it's typically their emotional needs. I want you to expound on this quote. I read your New York Post article, and this quote just hit me in the face. All right. It says, this culture of silence and excuses is pervasive in our society where adults are allowed to behave like impulsive children, chasing every whimsical desire, while children are expected to respond to parental failures with the maturity of adults, right? It is a complete 180 where we're putting this pressure on the kids to be mature adults while the adults get to be immature children and chase every desire. Can you expound on that? Like what is your thought process when you wrote that? What were you thinking?
Well, actually, that line I've said in many of ways in different interviews, and that's one of my favorite lines to use because it's like a common theme that I would see over and over. I would watch these adults act like absolute children, just making terrible, obviously bad decisions. And then you find out they got 5 kids. And you're thinking to yourself, how in the hell is this possible? Like these poor children are having to deal with this child person who's sort of raising them as they're just chasing all different types of stuff, sleeping with all different types of men, or some guy who's just living a reckless life, and they got kids. And these kids don't know any better. Like some of the most tragic stuff to watch is like police cam footage when they were in their body cams and going to domestic situations where the mom went to the club and the kids are home by themselves. And the reason the cops are called is because one of them wandered outside looking aimlessly and almost got hit by a car. Like these are real things that happen all the time. But the adult wanted to go to the club. Like what did you expect me to do? And they treat the kids like adults. If you get hungry, go in the refrigerator and take this out. And it's just like, man, the roles are reversed.
Yeah.
And guess what? If the kids mess up, they went outside because they were scared and confused, then the kids get in trouble. Then the kids get in trouble by the parent. I told you not to leave the house, right? Because you're supposed to cover for me as the childish adult who wants to run around and shake his ass at the club. Like that's the level of immaturity that I see constantly. And it comes in different shapes and colors. It comes in different economic classes. You have the same thing from married couples who want to get divorced. They get to they have this solid family and someone's not happy anymore, and they get to go sleep with whoever and blow up an entire family because they wanted to feel something or they wanted some new tail or whatever it is. But they get to act like the whimsical kid, and they say, you know what? I know divorce is hard. We'll put them into therapy. They'll be fine. Let's move forward because I want to sleep with someone new. And I don't want to be with you anymore. And they get to do all these things. And at no point do they think of the kid. When that guy went and cheated on his wife, before he put his penis in that woman, he didn't think about how this might affect his kids. Like, he just did the thing that he wanted to do. He wanted to have that animal instinct and do these things. He did not care about his responsibility to his children. He was selfish in that moment. That's the thing that he wanted to do. Forget his vows to his wife. He couldn't even think about his own kids. And so that's the level of, and this kind of goes into a whole bigger thing about the promises that we make, our responsibility, and I do think that there's an element of becoming more secular, where our word is just words. It doesn't mean, oh, you know what? I know I said the death do us part, but you know what? Like, it's not working out. So, so just like our word means nothing. Being responsible is an optional choice. It's just
Yeah.
the adults get to just do whatever they want to do. But those kids can't go out and get a job and run away from home, right? Those kids can't buy their own food. They don't have full rights. And I don't
Yeah.
think people understand that. Kids don't have full rights. They have to be taken care of by someone. And so that means that either the parents are going to raise them or the state is going to raise them. And the state raising your kids is not going to fare well either. So
Yeah.
Right.
I think we have to really take a hold of the choices that we make. Are we acting like impulsive children? We're just chasing some feeling, chasing some need. And I will once again say, I'm not speaking from, I have never done anything wrong. I've been a perfect parent. I've had moments too, just like any other parent. And thankfully, some of those moments never went to fruition. And I'm glad that they didn't. But like, I'm man enough to say, don't be like me. Like, make better choices. Hold some sort of value that is a godly value to be a parent of a child. Like these things mean something intrinsically. And so like all of these things that I'm doing today and how I live is an example for my child on top of just being a man. But I don't cheat on my wife because of multiple reasons, but a big reason is I don't want my son to see that I cheated on my wife.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want him to see that. I don't want him to think, well, my dad did it. I mean, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Like, I want to live by example for my son. And I think these things are really important.
Yeah. And I know we got to wrap up, but I'll say this, because one of the things, the other side of that, when you talked about the adults get to act like kids, and it was like they create these broken situations, and then the kid is expected to receive or handle the situation like a mature adult.
Yeah.
Right. And that is like just so backwards. One thing on our show we do like to do, because we talk about a lot of issues, we also want to talk about and leave people with, okay, what is the solution? Right. So I want to ask you, as we close out, moving forward, how can we change this cycle? How can we change the way things currently are so that the next generation isn't repeating the same mistakes that we've made?
So I'm going to use a Dr. Phil-ism. You cannot change what you don't acknowledge. And so this book is an acknowledgement that there is a problem. And I don't think we fully understand what the problem is to acknowledge it. And so that's what my attempt with this book was to highlight all the dirty stuff. It is, for people who haven't read it, it is an uncomfortable read, but it is a necessary read, right? And you will cry if you have some sort of emotional bone in your body. You will cry, or you will feel some sort of shame because, oh, that's me. Oh, I did do that. Like, this is a book calling things out with love, but we have to be honest about these things if we're going to improve the circumstance. I can't sugarcoat a big problem like this. Otherwise, we won't take it serious enough to actually fix it. So the problem I've been seeing is that we've been saying, well, yeah, sometimes it is a problem. Yeah, it's been minimizing the impact. And so I'm using my story to say that it is a much deeper problem, and an emotionally deeper problem than people want to give it credit for. So the first step is we have to acknowledge that it is a problem. Second thing is, I believe in forgiveness. There are a lot of young men who are out there who are desperately looking for their father to enter their lives. And the same thing for young women who are looking for their father to acknowledge where they made mistakes so that maybe they could possibly build some sort of relationship. I've been very fortunate that writing this book has opened up different opportunities to talk to people who are fathers who said, you know what, I should have done better. And I'm trying to get into my child's relationship. And I've had conversations with them. Here's how you do it. But whatever you do, don't give up, right? Don't say, well, that's your mom's story. You need to hear my story. That's dismissing their feelings. You need to be accountable for what you're responsible for, because you had a part in whatever happened, whether it's divorce, single parent, whatever it is, but you played a part into it. And it's about acknowledging what your children are going through and being accountable for it and sincerely apologizing to them. And you know what? They still may make you want to hurt because they want you to hurt just like they've been hurting. But at some point, they may open up their hearts to allow you in, and maybe you can build a new relationship, right? You can't go back and recreate your childhood with them. You can create a new type of relationship with them. And I think and I've talked to people with stuff like this has happened, and they are thankful that, you know what, my dad entered my life when I was 30, but I'm so glad because from the age of 30 till they passed away, we were able to build a new type of relationship. And I'm so glad that happened. So the last thing you want to do is give up on your kids if you are trying to re-enter their lives. So for the children who were left behind, including myself, we need to be more forgiving. And I do think we need to be a little bit more empathetic, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We make mistakes. I don't know my father's story. As much as I'm talking about him, I don't know what he went through, right? To be empathetic. I know what my mom went through, and I understand, and I don't tell her story because that's her story, but I understand as an adult, and I get it. At the end of the day, being resentful and angry helps no one. I can talk about these things. I don't hate my father. I've accepted the circumstance as to what it is, but if he was still alive and he reached out to me and apologized and said, I'm sorry, I just want to build something new, I would allow him to do that for me. And so I do think that we need to release this pain and resentment and anger. Maybe it's through therapy or whatever it might be through, but that's how we actually move forward. Otherwise, we're stuck in the past. So even for me, writing this book was difficult because I had already resolved all this stuff for me, right? And that's where I want more people to resolve these things, except for what it is. Maybe your parents didn't love you. That's just what it is. You can't change that. But what you can change is your future and how you are with your kids and stopping the cycle, right? But you have to forgive. You have to let that anger and animosity go. So that's why I have multiple solution chapters in the book, but I think that's a really, really big one. So we can't stay angry at our parents, because it doesn't, even if we're 1000% right and they're terrible people, it does us no good to stay angry at them, to never forgive, never let it go, and just move forward, because it will always hold us back.
Man, that'll preach. That will preach. Man, Adam, I appreciate you being willing to go off code and even write this book and say the hard things that need to be said, because for way too long, we have minimize those things to stay on code and not to say anything bad. And I know in your book, you don't racialize it, right?
Correct.
But just speaking to our cultural context, it's just something we just don't like to talk about or acknowledge in full. And we keep those family secrets and they just repeat themselves. So I appreciate you being willing to say the hard things and just have this hard conversation. So
thanks for coming and for being with us. And to all of you who are watching, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you have enjoyed this conversation. Make sure to subscribe, like. Adam, tell us how we can follow you, how our viewers can follow you. Do you have a website? Like, where can we get the book at?
Yeah, you can subscribe to my Substack, adambcoleman.substack.com. The book is available at every retailer. Or if you don't want to go to retailer, you want to come direct, you can go to wrongspeak.net and purchase it directly through Wrongspeak Publishing, which is my company. So yeah, the book is available everywhere. The audiobook is available. It's not on Audible as of right now. Long story, trying to get it resolved, but it is on every other audiobook platform if you prefer audiobooks.
Awesome. I would say definitely get both books because they are great reads. They're not easy, not in like, I would say the technicality and the wording, but they really are going to make you think and make you consider the way that you live, that you participate with one, yourself, and how are you being, true unto God and living your life, in accordance with how scripture tells us to live. But then also, are you living complicitly, or hypocritically in the life of someone else? And so it's just a really good read. We would say, encourage you to pick it up. And with that, gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate y'all.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
All right, you guys, we will see y'all later. Have a good one.